My daughter screamed with a fury I had never seen in her eyes. "You either pay for your food, or you find somewhere else to live." Her words fell on me like stones, each one heavier than the last. There I was, standing in the kitchen of my own house, the house I built brick by brick with my late husband, being thrown out by my own flesh and blood. What Patricia didn't know, what she never imagined, as she pointed her finger at me like I was a stranger, is that for the last 3 years, it was I who had been religiously depositing $900 into her bank account every single month. I, the mother who she claimed contributed nothing, was the one keeping a roof over our heads. "Mom, you're not a child anymore," Patricia continued with that voice she had learned to use since Greg came into our lives. "You have to understand that everyone here works, everyone contributes. If you want to stay, you pay your share like any other tenant." A tenant. In my own house. The words stabbed into my chest like rusty pins. But I didn't cry, not there, not in front of her, and certainly not in front of him. He was sitting on my couch, smirking with that look of satisfaction I had grown to hate. Greg nodded from his spot as if he owned the place, as if he had spent years building what I had raised over decades. "Cecilia, it's only fair," he said in that syrupy voice he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. "Patricia's right. We all pull our weight here. Him who had been living in my house for 6 months without paying a single cent, without even looking for a job, but oh so willing to give his opinion on how we should manage our finances. Brooke, my 16-year-old granddaughter, was sitting on the stairs, watching the whole scene with those big eyes she had inherited from her grandfather. She didn't say a word, but I could see how she clenched her fists against her knees. She knew, maybe not the details, but she knew something was terribly wrong with this picture. "You have until the end of the month to decide," Patricia added, crossing her arms. "Either you pay $500 a month for your room and board, or you find another place. We can't keep supporting someone who doesn't contribute." Contribute. The word echoed in my ears like a broken bell. If only she knew that every dollar she had spent in that house for the last 3 years, every electric bill, every grocery run, every dollar she thought magically appeared in her account, came from my pension, from my savings, from the sale of the heirloom jewelry I inherited from my mother. I didn't say anything, just nodded my head. I picked up my cup of tea, which had gone cold on the kitchen table, and slowly climbed the stairs to my room. Each step creaked under my feet, as if the house itself were protesting what had just happened within its walls. Behind me, I heard Greg's laugh and Patricia's words. It's about time she learned how things work in the real world. I closed my bedroom door and sat on the bed I had shared with my husband for 30 years. The white curtains I had sewn myself filtered the afternoon light, casting golden shadows on the family photos that decorated my dresser. There we all were, Patricia as a little girl, her graduation, her wedding, the birth of Brooke. An entire life of memories built on love, now reduced to a business transaction. I opened my nightstand drawer and took out the small notebook where I wrote down all my expenses. Page after page of meticulous records. Deposit: Patricia, $900. Groceries, $1,200. Electric, $340. Gas, $180. 3 years of numbers that told the story Patricia never bothered to read. 3 years of being the invisible provider in a house where I was now treated like a burden. That night, as the house grew quiet, and I could hear Greg and Patricia laughing from the living room, I made a decision that would change everything forever. 3 months earlier, everything had seemed normal. It was a Sunday in March, and the smell of the pot roast I had been cooking since morning filled every corner of the house. The dining room table was set with the embroidered tablecloth that had been my mother-in-law's, the good china I saved for special occasions, and the linen napkins I religiously ironed every week. Patricia had arrived early with Brooke, and for the first time in a long while, my daughter seemed relaxed, almost happy. "Smells delicious, Mom," she said as she sat in the chair that had always been hers, the one facing the window where the afternoon light streamed in. She was wearing that blue dress that looked so good on her, the one I had given her for her birthday, and she had her hair pulled back in that elegant way that made her look younger. Brooke ran into the kitchen to help me with the salad, as she always did, telling me about her classes, her friends, the books she was reading. Everything felt perfect, or so I thought. I should have noticed the little signs. How Patricia checked her phone every 5 minutes. How she smiled in that strange way when she got texts. How her eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen since her divorce. I should have been suspicious when she asked me, so casually, about my finances. "Mom, how do you make your pension stretch so far?" she had asked while pouring iced tea into the glasses. "I can barely make it to the end of the month on my salary, and you always seem so comfortable with money." I had smiled, proud that I could help her without making her feel bad. "Oh, honey, when you learn how to budget, you can always make it work. Besides, your father taught me to save when we were young." What I didn't tell her was that every month, like clockwork, I transferred $900 into her account ever since she got divorced. What she didn't know was that I had sold my mother's engagement ring, my grandmother's gold hoop earrings, and even some of the antique furniture I had stored in the basement. All to make sure that she and Brooke never had to go without. It was my secret, my quiet way of taking care of them without hurting her pride. That afternoon, after lunch, Patricia got a call. She walked out into the backyard to answer it, and through the kitchen window, I could see her pacing among my rose bushes, gesturing animatedly, laughing with a joy I hadn't seen in her for years. When she came back in, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were shining. "It was a friend," she said, but there was something in her voice, a contained excitement she couldn't quite hide. Brooke looked at her curiously but said nothing. My granddaughter had always been observant, just like her grandfather. 2 weeks later, Patricia told me about Greg. "He's a wonderful man, Mom. He worked in construction for years, but he's between projects right now. He's so smart, so hardworking." She described him as if he were a prize she had won, with the excitement of a teenage girl in love that contrasted with her 42 years. I was happy for her. I truly was. After the disaster of her marriage, she deserved to be happy. The first time she brought him home was a Friday afternoon. Greg was a tall man, strongly built, with the rough hands of someone who has worked their whole life. He had an easy smile and knew exactly what to say to make a good impression. He brought me flowers, yellow roses, and told me Patricia had told him so much about me. "Cecilia, it's an honor to meet the woman who raised such an extraordinary daughter." During dinner, he was charming. He praised my cooking, asked about the history of the house, and showed interest in the family photos on the walls. He even played a game of checkers with Brooke after dinner and made her laugh with his jokes. Patricia watched him with adoration, as if she had found the perfect man. But I should have paid more attention to the small details, to how his eyes scanned the house, evaluating, measuring, to how he asked very specific questions about whether the house was paid off, about my finances, about whether I had other relatives, to how his smile would vanish when he thought no one was looking. It was Brooke who opened my eyes, though at the time I didn't fully understand what she was trying to tell me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Greg had practically moved into our house. I was in the kitchen making snacks when my granddaughter came in with that worried look she got when something was deeply troubling her. "Grandma, have you noticed anything weird about Mom lately?" she asked in a low voice, glancing toward the living room where Patricia and Greg were watching television. I wiped my hands on my apron and looked at her carefully. Brooke had a maturity that sometimes surprised me, as if she were much older than her 16 years. "Weird how, honey?" I asked, though I had also noticed changes in Patricia. Lately, she spoke differently, using words that weren't hers, phrases that sounded rehearsed. And there was something in her eyes, a new hardness that unsettled me. "It's like she's a different person, Grandma. Yesterday she told me I needed to be more independent, that it was time I learned the value of $1. She suggested I get a part-time job after school." Brooke wrinkled her forehead. "But she's never said that before. She always said my only job was to study." That same night, while I was washing the dishes after dinner, I overheard a conversation that changed everything. Greg and Patricia were in the living room, but their voices carried clearly into the kitchen. They thought I couldn't hear them. Or maybe they just didn't care anymore. "Honey, you have to be firmer with your mother," Greg was saying in that soft but insistent voice I had learned to recognize. "A woman your age shouldn't be living with her mother. It's time for you to take charge of your own life." "But Greg, she's my mom. And besides, this is her house," Patricia replied, though her voice sounded less certain than usual. "Her house? Patricia, listen to me. You're the one who works, who supports this home. Your mother has done her part. It's natural that now it's your turn to be the head of the household." There was something hypnotic in the way he spoke, as if he were planting ideas in my daughter's mind, seed by seed. "But she has her pension," Patricia murmured. "Her pension?" Greg laughed with contempt. "How much can that be? $3,000–4,000? With what it costs to maintain this house, with all the expenses you have, that doesn't even cover the utilities. You're the one really holding all this together, baby. It's time she recognized that." End. I dropped a spoon in the sink, and the clatter cut off the conversation. I heard them shift in the living room, probably moving further from the kitchen, but I had already heard enough. Greg wasn't just living in my house for free. He was convincing my daughter that I was a burden, a freeloader in my own home. The following days were like walking on eggshells. Patricia started making strange comments during meals. "Mom, don't you think it's time you considered moving somewhere smaller? This house is too big for one person." Or, "I was thinking, Mom, maybe you could contribute more to the household expenses. After all, we all live here." Greg, for his part, had become the self-appointed family financial expert. "Cecilia, Patricia was telling me you're very good with your money. Have you ever thought about investing? I know some very good opportunities." His eyes would gleam when he talked about money, as if he were already calculating how much he could get out of me. But the last straw was when I found Greg snooping in my bedroom. It was a Saturday morning. Patricia had gone to the supermarket, and Brooke was at a friend's house. I went upstairs to get my purse and found him standing in front of my dresser with one of the drawers open, looking through my personal documents. "Greg, what are you doing in my room?" I yelled, more surprised than angry. He turned around with that smile I had learned to distrust. "Oh, Cecilia, I'm so sorry. Patricia asked me to look for some pills she needed urgently. She said you might have them in here." He was lying through his teeth, and we both knew it. "My medications are in the bathroom, Greg, not in my personal drawers." "You're right. How silly of me. I'll get out of your way." He left my room, but not before our eyes met. In his, I saw something that made my blood run cold. He knew that I knew, and he no longer cared to hide it. That night, I checked all my documents. Everything was in its place, but I was left with the feeling that he had memorized every paper, every account number, every detail of my financial situation. Greg was no longer just an unwanted guest. He had become a threat. Greg's campaign to poison Patricia against me intensified after the incident in my room. It was as if he had decided there was no point in pretending anymore, that it was time to accelerate his plans. It started with seemingly innocent comments at dinner, casual observations that stuck like little daggers in the family harmony we had built over years. "Patricia, honey, I was just thinking," he would say while carving the chicken I had cooked. "Your mom seems so comfortable living here without a care in the world. It must be wonderful to have no responsibilities at her age." His words sounded like compliments, but the venom was in the tone, in the way he would look at Patricia to make sure the message landed. "Greg's right, Mom," Patricia started saying a few days later. "I see you so relaxed lately. Don't you miss having your own independence?" I would look at her, not understanding where these ideas were coming from. This was my house, my lifelong home. And now my own daughter was talking to me as if I were a guest who had overstayed her welcome. But what hurt the most was seeing how Brooke watched everything in silence. My granddaughter had started spending more time in her room, avoiding family meals, making excuses not to be present when Greg began his lectures on independence and generational responsibilities. One afternoon, I found her crying in her room. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, sitting on her bed and stroking her hair. "Grandma, I don't like how everything is changing," she said through her sobs. "Greg is putting weird ideas in Mom's head. Yesterday, I heard him telling her that you should be in a retirement home, that it would be for the best." Brooke's words hit me like ice water. "A retirement home?" I whispered, more to myself than to her. "Yes, Grandma. And Mom didn't say no. She just stayed quiet, like she was thinking about it." Brooke wiped her tears with the sleeve of her sweater. "I'm scared, Grandma. I'm scared she's going to go crazy and do something terrible." End of. That night, I pretended to be asleep when Patricia went up to her room. I heard her pause outside my door, as if she wanted to come in and talk. But after a few moments, her footsteps moved away. The next day, at breakfast, she announced her decision with a coldness I didn't recognize in my own daughter. "Mom, Greg and I have been talking about our financial situation," she began, not looking me in the eye. "This house is very expensive to maintain, and I think it would be best if we all contributed more equally." There was that word again, contribute. As if I hadn't contributed every single day of my adult life to keeping this family together. "What do you mean, Patricia?" I asked, though I already knew where this was going. "I mean, maybe it's time for you to consider moving to a smaller place, more appropriate for a person your age. A place where you'll have company your own age, where you won't have to worry about the upkeep of such a big house." Greg nodded from his seat at the table, calmly eating a donut I had bought the day before. "It's for your own good, Cecilia. At your age, living alone in a house this big can be dangerous. What if you fall and no one is around to help?" "I don't live alone," I retorted, trying to stay calm. "I live with my family." "Mom," Patricia sighed as if I were a small child throwing a tantrum. "You have to be realistic. Brooke is growing up. She needs her space. Greg and I are planning our future together. And you deserve a place where you can be peaceful without the worries of maintaining a house." "And what would happen to this house?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Well, we'd have to sell it, of course. It's too big for us, too. With the money from the sale, we could help you get a nice apartment or even pay for a very comfortable facility where you'd have everything you need." There it was, the whole plan, laid bare in all its ugliness. They wanted me to leave my own home so they could sell it and keep the money. And my daughter, my own daughter, was sitting there explaining how it would be better for everyone if I just disappeared from their lives. "I need time to think about it," was all I could say. "Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need," Patricia said, but there was an impatience in her voice she couldn't hide. "But not too much time. These decisions are best made quickly." That afternoon, while they went out to look at apartments, I was left alone in the house that had been my home for 30 years. I walked through every room, touching the walls my husband and I had painted, remembering Christmases in the living room, birthdays in the dining room, sleepless nights in the kitchen, drinking tea, and planning our child's future. It was then that I made the decision that would change everything. If they wanted to play dirty, I would teach them how the game was really played. The pressure became unbearable after our conversation about selling the house. Greg and Patricia began acting as if they had already made all the decisions for me, talking about my future as if I weren't present, making plans that included getting rid of my furniture, my memories, my entire life. "Cecilia, we found a beautiful facility," Greg announced one morning at breakfast, pulling out his phone to show me pictures. "Look at these lovely gardens. And there are activities every day, craft classes, bingo, even dancing on Fridays." He spoke with the fake cheer of a salesman, as if he were offering me a permanent vacation instead of banishment from my own home. Patricia chimed in enthusiastically, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's perfect for you, Mom. You'll have friends your own age. You won't have to worry about cooking or cleaning. It'll be like staying in a hotel all the time." Her words sounded rehearsed, as if she had been practicing the speech in front of a mirror. "And how much does this wonderful place cost?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well, it's not cheap," Greg admitted, "but with the sale of the house, we'd have more than enough to cover the expenses for many years. And if there's anything left over, Patricia and I will be here to help." Of course they'd be there to help, after they had spent the money from the sale of my house. But what hurt the most was Brooke's reaction when she found out about the plan. My granddaughter came running to my room that same afternoon, her eyes red from crying. "Grandma, Mom told me you're going to live in a retirement home," she sobbed, hugging me desperately. "Is it true? Are you going to leave me?" "Oh, my love," I said, feeling my own heart break. "I don't want to leave. This is my house. This is my home." "Then don't go," she pleaded. "Tell Mom you don't want to leave. She has to listen to you. It's not that easy, Brooke. Your mom has already made up her mind." "But it's your house. You lived here before Greg, before me." My granddaughter was right, but reason didn't seem to matter in this house anymore. The following days were a constant ordeal. Greg had taken complete control of the situation and no longer even pretended to be polite to me. He would sit in my favorite armchair, the one that had been my husband's, and talk on the phone about selling the house, as if it were already his. He invited a real estate agent over without consulting me, and they had the nerve to do a walkthrough while I was in the kitchen. The house is in excellent condition, I heard the agent say. With a few minor updates, we could get a very good price in the current market. Yes, well, my mother-in-law is very careful with her things, Greg replied in that proprietary tone that made my blood boil. She's kept everything pristine for years. End quote. Patricia, who had been quiet for most of the visit, finally spoke up. How long do you think the sale would take? With the market as it is now, I'd say 2 to 3 months, tops. It's a very attractive property in a highly sought-after area. That night at dinner, Greg officially announced the timeline they had established without me. Cecilia, we've decided it would be best to act quickly. The real estate market is hot right now, and we don't know how long that will last. We're thinking of listing the house next week. Next week? I managed to say, though I felt as if I'd been punched in the stomach. Yes, Mom, Patricia intervened, avoiding my gaze. The faster, the better. That way you can move into the facility soon and start your new life. And what happens to me in the meantime? Where am I supposed to live for those 2 or 3 months? Greg and Patricia exchanged a look as if they had been expecting that question. Well, we thought you could stay here until the sale is finalized, Patricia finally said, but you'd have to contribute to the household expenses in the meantime. It wouldn't be fair for you to live here for free while we're paying for everything. There it was again, that cursed word, contribute. The irony was so cruel it almost made me laugh. They, who were living off my money without knowing it, were asking me to contribute to the upkeep of my own house. How much? $500 a month, Greg answered without hesitation. For your room and board. It's very reasonable, considering everything that's included. That night, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling I had looked at thousands of times over 30 years, I made the hardest decision of my life. I was not going to let them kick me out of my own home like an old dog. I was not going to let them take advantage of me for one more day. It was time they found out who had really been supporting this family for the last 3 years. It was time for Greg and Patricia to meet the real Cecilia. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday night, after a tense dinner where the silence had become more eloquent than any words. Greg had been especially aggressive all week, acting as if he already owned the house, reorganizing my things without permission, inviting his friends over to drink beer in my living room, treating me like I was a maid in my own home. Cecilia, we need to talk, Patricia said that night, with that official voice she had adopted since Greg brainwashed her. We were in the living room. He was in my late husband's armchair. She was standing by the window, and I was on the couch I'd bought when Patricia was just a little girl. We spoke with the real estate agent again, she continued, not looking me in the eye. He says if we list the house this week, we could have offers before the end of the month. The market is very active. Greg nodded, as if it were his decision too. It's an excellent opportunity, Cecilia. We can't let it pass us by. And about your situation? Patricia added, finally turning to look at me. We've decided it would be best for you to move into the facility immediately. We've already reserved a spot for you, a very nice one with a view of the garden. You already reserved a spot? I asked, feeling outrage rise in my throat. Without consulting me? Mom, it's for your own good, Patricia sighed. Besides, we need the space clear so we can show the house to potential buyers. We can't have your things taking up the master bedroom. The master bedroom? I repeated slowly. You mean my room? The one I shared with your father for 30 years? Well, technically it's the largest room in the house, Greg interjected with that condescending smirk I had come to detest. Buyers will want to see it empty so they can imagine themselves living here. It was in that moment that something inside me broke. To see this stranger talking about my room, my bed, the place where I had raised my child, where I had mourned my husband, where I had lived the most important moments of my life, as if it were a piece of merchandise to be moved and rearranged at his convenience. And what if I refuse? I asked, surprising them both with the firmness in my voice. Patricia and Greg exchanged one of those conspiratorial looks they had perfected over the past few months. Mom, don't be difficult, Patricia said impatiently. We've already made the decision. It's what's best for everyone but me. Stop being so selfish, Patricia exploded. And in that moment, I saw Greg smile slightly, satisfied to have gotten exactly the reaction he was looking for. It's always about you, always about what you want. What about what I want? What about my happiness? What about my future with Greg? Your future with Greg? I repeated, looking at the man who had destroyed my family in less than 6 months. The future you're building with the money from the sale of my house? It's time for you to understand your place in this family, Patricia shouted, and the words echoed in the living room like a slap. You are not the head of the household anymore. That time is over. Now I'm the one who makes the decisions. Greg stood up from the armchair and put his hand on Patricia's shoulder, as if supporting her. Your daughter is right, Cecilia. It's natural for the generations to shift. Patricia is an adult, an independent woman who can make her own decisions about her life and her family's life. Her family? I looked Patricia directly in the eyes. Since when did I stop being part of your family? Mom, don't be so dramatic. Patricia ran her hands through her hair in frustration. You're still my mother. That will never change. But you can't live like you own everything anymore. Like we all have to run every decision by you. I do own this house, Patricia. That's not an opinion. It's a legal fact. For now, she yelled. And there it was, the naked truth, raw and unadorned. For now, you're the owner. But that's going to change. Are you threatening me? Greg stepped in before Patricia could answer. No one is threatening anyone, Cecilia. We're just being realistic about the situation. You're getting older. You need care that we can't provide for you here. At the facility, you'll have 24-hour medical attention, age-appropriate activities, the company of people who understand what you're going through. What I'm going through, I asked. What exactly is it that I'm going through? You can't take care of yourself anymore. Patricia exploded again. You need help. It's not healthy for a woman your age to live alone in such a big house. I don't live alone. I live with you. That's about to end. Patricia pointed her finger at me, as if I were a child being scolded. Greg and I are going to start our own family. We're going to have children. We can't have an old woman living with us. The silence that followed those words was deafening. Even Greg seemed surprised by the cruelty of what Patricia had said. Brooke, who had been listening from the stairs, began to cry audibly. An old woman, I repeated softly. That's how you see me now. Patricia immediately realized what she had said, but it was too late to take it back. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I interrupted her, rising from the couch with a dignity I didn't know I still possessed. And that's okay. Now I know exactly what you think of me. I walked toward the stairs, where Brooke was waiting for me with open arms. Grandma, she sobbed, don't listen to them. I want you here. I know, my love, I said, hugging her tightly. I want you here too. That night, lying in my bed, looking at the photographs of my husband on the nightstand, I knew the time had come to act. It was time for Patricia and Greg to discover who had really been keeping this house afloat for the last 3 years. It was time to show them what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. The next day, while Patricia and Greg went out to look at more retirement homes to banish me to, I began my plan in silence. This was not the time for shouting or confrontations. It was time to act with the calculated coolness I had learned from my husband when he handled his business. He always used to say that revenge is a dish best served when the enemy doesn't even realize they're being defeated until it's too late. The first thing I did was go to the bank. I dressed in my best navy blue suit, the one I wore for important occasions. I did my hair carefully and walked the 4 blocks to the branch where I had managed my finances for over 20 years. Miss Martinez, the manager who had known me forever, greeted me with her usual smile. Cecilia, what a pleasure. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said in the calmest voice I could manage. It's for $900 that I deposit monthly into my daughter's account. Of course, let me pull up your account. Mrs. Martinez typed on her computer and then looked at me curiously. I see you've been making this transfer for 3 years. Are you sure you want to cancel it? Completely sure. And when would you like the cancellation to take effect? Right now. I also asked her to print out all the receipts for the transfers I had made over the past 3 years. Page after page of evidence, showing how I had been the one maintaining that house, paying the bills, being the true provider while they treated me like a burden. My next stop was the office of Mr. Silva, the lawyer who had handled my family's legal affairs since my husband died. Robert Silva was an older man, the kind who inspired confidence the moment he spoke. Cecilia, always a pleasure. What brings you in? I explained the entire situation to him, how Greg had manipulated Patricia, how they wanted to kick me out of my own house, how they planned to sell it and keep the money. Mr. Silva listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes, his brow furrowing when I told him about the threats and ultimatums. I understand your concerns, Cecilia, and you're right to be upset. But tell me, is the house in your name? Completely. My husband left it to me in his will, and I am the sole legal owner. Perfect. Then no one can sell it without your authorization, no matter what they say or plan. Mr. Silva leaned back in his chair. But I am concerned about the psychological pressure they are putting on you. Have you considered the possibility of changing the locks? Can I do that? It's your house, Cecilia. You can do whatever you like with it. I left his office with a clear plan and the legal reassurance I needed. My next stop was a locksmith, where I hired Mr. Mendoza to come that very afternoon and change every lock on the house. I also bought a small digital recorder, the size of a matchbox, that could be easily hidden. When I got home, I found Brooke sitting on the stairs with that sad look on her face that broke my heart. My granddaughter had been carrying the weight of this whole situation, trapped between her loyalty to me and her love for her mother. "Grandma, is it true they're going to make you leave?" "Come here, honey," I said, sitting next to her on the stairs. "I need you to help me with something very important." I explained part of my plan, just enough for her to understand that I wasn't going down without a fight. I showed her the recorder and asked her to hide it in the living room, in a place where it could pick up Patricia and Greg's conversations when they thought no one else was home. "Is that legal, Grandma?" "It's my house, Brooke. And if someone is planning to defraud me in my own home, I have the right to protect myself." That afternoon, when the locksmith arrived, I told Brooke to help me distract Patricia and Greg while Mr. Mendoza worked. It wasn't hard. They were so busy planning my banishment that they didn't even notice the sound of the tools. That night at dinner, Greg made his usual announcement about the progress of their plans. "Cecilia, I have good news. The facility can take you next Monday. It's perfect because the real estate agent wants to bring the first potential buyers on Tuesday." "Next Monday?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Isn't that a little soon?" "Not at all," Patricia chimed in. "We've already wasted too much time. The sooner, the better. Besides," Greg added with that fake smile, "we've already paid the deposit for the facility. It would be a shame to lose that money." End quote. "You already paid the deposit? With what money?" Patricia and Greg exchanged a look. "Well, we had to use our savings," Patricia lied. "But don't worry, we'll get it all back when we sell the house." That night, I pretended to be asleep when I heard them go down to the living room. I discreetly activated the recorder that Brooke had hidden behind the television and waited. I didn't have to wait long. "Do you think she suspects anything?" I heard Patricia's voice. "Not a chance," Greg replied. "She's so scared, she'll do whatever we tell her. She'll be out of here by Monday, and by Tuesday, we'll have the house on the market. What if she resists?" "She won't resist. She's already beaten. Besides, once she's in the facility, it will be much easier to convince her to sign the sales papers." "Are you sure this is going to work?" "Patricia, honey, trust me. In 3 months, we're going to be the owners of a house worth over $500,000. And the best part is, she's going to help us get it herself." I turned off the recorder and smiled in the darkness. They had just confessed to their entire plan, and I had every word on tape. Now, all that was left was the grand finale. Monday arrived like a promised storm. Greg and Patricia had spent the weekend organizing my move as if it were a military operation. They had packed my personal things in boxes, called the facility to confirm my arrival, and even hired a van to transport my belongings. All without consulting me, as if I were a piece of furniture to be moved at will. "Mom, the van gets here at 10 o'clock, Patricia announced at breakfast, avoiding my gaze. "You're all packed, just a few things left in the bathroom." Greg sat at the table, reviewing some papers with an air of satisfaction. "Cecilia, we also brought the documents you need to sign to facilitate the sale of the house. They're just formalities, but the lawyer said it's better to have them ready now." "What kind of documents?" I asked, though I knew exactly what they were. "A power of attorney," Patricia explained, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "So we can handle the sale in your name, without bothering you with all the errands. You'll be adjusting to your new life. You won't want to be worrying about paperwork." A power of attorney, I repeated slowly. To sell my house? It's temporary, Greg lied, just until the sale is complete. After that, we'll obviously transfer your share of the money to you, my share from the sale of my own house. The audacity was so great it almost made me laugh. At 9:30 in the morning, I pretended to be finishing packing my last few things in my room. From the window, I could see the van parked on the street, the driver waiting patiently. I saw Greg smoking in the backyard while talking on the phone, probably with the real estate agent. Patricia was in the living room, obsessively checking a to-do list. It was time to execute my plan. I came down the stairs carrying a small suitcase, like an old woman resigned to her fate. Patricia was waiting for me at the entrance, the power of attorney documents in her hands and a nervous smile on her face. "Ready, Mom?" she asked. "Almost," I answered calmly. "I just need to ask Greg something." Greg came into the house when he heard his name, still with the phone to his ear. "What do you need, Cecilia?" "I wanted to ask you something about the money that appears in Patricia's account every month," I said, watching the color drain from his face. "Since you're so good with finances, don't you find it strange that she receives $900 a month without knowing where it comes from?" Patricia frowned. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "About the $900 that appears in your bank account on the 5th of every month, without fail, for the last 3 years. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't get any mysterious deposits." End of greed. I took the bank receipts I had printed from my purse, all the papers showing the monthly transfers, and laid them out on the dining room table. "Are you sure, Patricia?" My daughter walked over to look at the documents, and I could see her expression transform as she read. Each page was a slap of reality. Transfer after transfer, month after month, year after year, all originating from my bank account and going into hers. "What is this?" Patricia stammered. "It's the proof that for the last 3 years, I have been the one supporting this house. Every dollar you thought magically appeared in your account. Every dollar that allowed you to pay for the lights, the gas, the food, came from my pension and my savings." Greg came over to see the documents, and I could see the blood drain from his face. This must be a mistake." "It's not a mistake, Greg. And if you check the date of the last transfer, you'll see it was canceled last Friday." End verse 2. Patricia looked up from the papers, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I didn't want to hurt your pride. Because I wanted to help you without you feeling bad about accepting it. Because I thought that's what mothers do, take care of their children in silence. But then this whole time..." Patricia looked back and forth between the documents and my face, as if trying to reorder everything she thought she knew about our financial situation. "This whole time, you have been living off my money, in my house, while planning to throw me out as if I were a burden." I finished the sentence for her. Greg tried to recover. "Well, this doesn't change anything. You still need care. It's still dangerous for you to live alone in a house this big." "You're right, Greg," I said with a smile that chilled them both. "It is dangerous to live with people who are planning to swindle me." I took the recorder out of my purse and pressed the play button. Their own voices filled the living room. The conversation from Saturday night, where they confessed their entire plan, where they talked about tricking me into signing papers, where they congratulated each other on being so clever. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. Greg backed toward the door, as if calculating the best escape route. "And now," I said, pulling the new keys from my purse, "I think it's time you found out who is really moving out of this house." Patricia looked up, confused. "Mom?" "Greg," I said, looking directly at the man who had come to destroy my family. "You have exactly 10 minutes to get your things out of my house. The locks were changed yesterday, and these are the only keys that exist." "What?" Greg stared at the keys in my hand as if they were a venomous snake. 10 minutes, Greg. After that, if you are still on my property, I will call the police for trespassing." Greg's transformation was instant. The charming man vanished, replaced by his true nature. "You can't do this. I live here. I have rights." "You have no rights in my house, Greg. You never paid rent. You never signed a lease. You were never anything more than a guest who abused my hospitality." "Patricia!" he yelled, turning to my daughter. "Say something! You can't let her do this to me." but Patricia was still staring at the bank receipts, as if she were finally understanding the magnitude of what they had been about to do. 9 minutes, Greg, I said, looking at my watch. And for the first time in months, I was in complete control of my own house. Greg stormed up the stairs like a hurricane, shouting threats that no longer scared me. "This isn't over, you crazy old woman. I'll sue you. I'll take this house from you anyway." His words bounced off the walls like stray bullets, but I remained motionless in the living room, calmly counting the minutes on my watch. Patricia was still sitting on the couch, going over the receipts again and again, as if hoping the numbers would magically change. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she mentally added up all the money she had received without knowing it. All the expenses she had been able to cover thanks to my silent help. "Mom," she finally whispered. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "I know, honey," I said, sitting beside her on the couch that had witnessed so many family conversations over the years. "He manipulated you. He filled your head with ideas that weren't yours. But the horrible things I said to you, the way I treated you," Patricia sobbed harder. "I called you an old woman. I told you that you weren't part of the family anymore." Words hurt, Patricia. But words can also be forgiven when they come from a heart that was led astray for the wrong reasons. Greg came down the stairs carrying 2 suitcases and a backpack, his face red with fury. He stopped in front of us, and for a moment I thought he might try something violent, but he must have seen something in my eyes that stopped him. "This isn't over, Cecilia," he threatened. "I'll be back with lawyers. I'll prove you're senile, that you can't take care of yourself." "Go get all the lawyers you want, Greg," I replied with a calm that surprised even me. "I have everything recorded, everything documented. I have proof of your plan to defraud me. I have witnesses to your threats. And above all, I have something you will never have." "What?" "This house is legally mine, and it always will be." "I do." Greg looked at Patricia one last time, perhaps hoping she would come to his defense, that she would leave with him, that she would choose the future they had planned together. But my daughter didn't look up from the documents. "Patricia!" he yelled at her. "Come with me. Don't stay here with this manipulative woman." Patricia slowly raised her head, and when she spoke, her voice sounded like the little girl she had been before Greg came to poison her mind. "Leave, Greg. Just leave." The slam of the door as he left echoed through the house like the end of a nightmare. The silence that followed was different from the one we had lived with for months. It wasn't the tense silence of hostility, but the clean silence of a new beginning. Brooke came running down the stairs and threw herself into my arms. "Grandma, is it true? Is Greg not coming back?" "No, my love. Greg is not coming back." Patricia approached us, her eyes swollen from crying. "Mom, can you forgive me? Can you forgive everything I said? Everything I planned to do to you?" I hugged her tightly, feeling her body relax against mine for the first time in months. "I already forgave you, Patricia. The moment I saw it wasn't you who was speaking." "How did you stay so calm through all of this? How did you plan all this without going crazy?" "Because your father taught me that patience and strategy always beat impulsiveness and greed. And because I knew that deep down, my daughter was still in there. She was just lost." That afternoon, while Patricia was on the phone with the bank to fully understand the financial situation and Brooke was making tea in the kitchen just like old times, I sat in my favorite armchair and looked around my living room. Everything was exactly as it should be. My photos in their places, my plants by the window, my books on the shelf my husband had built. Patricia came back from the phone with a look of awe and shame. "Mom, the bank confirmed everything. For 3 years I received exactly $32,400 from your account. Money I spent without even wondering where it came from. Money I gave you with love, Patricia. That money served its purpose. How can I ever repay you?" "You already have," I said, pointing to Brooke who was bringing in the tea tray. "I got my family back." 3 months later, Patricia found a better job, one that allowed her to support herself without needing my monthly transfers. Greg never came back, never made good on his threats. He simply vanished from our lives like the weed he was. Occasionally, Patricia would get a text from him, but she would delete it without reading. Brooke graduated with honors from high school and decided to study law. "To protect other grandmas like you," she told me with a smile that lit up the whole house. "And I, Cecilia, continued to live in my house, the house I had defended with the patience of someone who knows that justice arrives when it is meant to. Every morning when I woke up and saw the sun streaming through my bedroom windows, I remembered the words I had said to myself on that terrible night when I planned my revenge. They will never take my home. And they never did. I planted mint in the backyard where Greg used to smoke, and every time the scent filled the house, it reminded me that some battles are won in silence, that dignity is reclaimed step by step, and that true love always finds its way back home. The house remained mine, as it had always been, as it always would be.